The Vietnam War. Even the name evokes images of turmoil. Jungles ablaze, helicopters silhouetted against a fiery sky, young soldiers marching toward an uncertain fate. It was a conflict that tore at the fabric of America, leaving deep wounds on both sides of the Pacific. This wasn't just a war fought on battlefields. It was a war that invaded living rooms, sparking protests and igniting passionate debates about freedom, intervention, and the true cost of war. The Vietnam War remains a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the enduring legacy of political decisions made in the name of ideology. The Vietnam War was a turning point in American history, forcing a nation to confront its own identity and its role in the world. It's a story that deserves to be told, remembered, and understood, for its lessons resonate even today. This is the story of the Vietnam War. To understand the Vietnam War, we must journey back to the colonial past. Vietnam, a nation yearning for independence, found itself caught in the crosshairs of the Cold War. France, the colonial power in Vietnam, was reluctant to relinquish its grip. The rise of Ho Chi Minh and the Communist Viet Minh further fueled tensions. The United States, fearing the spread of communism in Southeast Asia, saw Vietnam as a crucial battleground in its ideological struggle against the Soviet Union. The 1954 Geneva Accords, intended to bring peace, instead divided Vietnam in two. The North, under Ho Chi Minh, embraced communism. The South, supported by the US, became a bulwark against it. This fragile peace was doomed to fail. By the early 1960s, the conflict escalated into a full-blown war, drawing in the US deeper and deeper into the Vietnamese quagmire. The seeds of discord, sown in colonialism and nurtured by Cold War paranoia, had blossomed into a bitter and protracted war. The Vietnam War was a clash of ideologies and ambitions, drawing in multiple players onto the battlefield. On one side stood the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, or North Vietnam, and the National Liberation Front, also known as the Viet Cong. The North Vietnamese Army, a well-equipped force, bore the brunt of the fighting in the south. The Viet Cong, a guerrilla force operating within South Vietnam, utilized their knowledge of the terrain and civilian population to their advantage. On the other side stood the Republic of Vietnam, or South Vietnam, and its principal ally, the United States. The Army of the Republic of Vietnam fought to defend the South, but was plagued by internal divisions and struggled to match the commitment of their communist adversaries. The US, initially providing advisors, poured in troops and resources, transforming the conflict into a proxy war against communism. The war saw the participation of other nations, including South Korea, Australia and Thailand, allied with the US, highlighting the global dimensions of this conflict. The Vietnam War was a tapestry of countless battles, each leaving an indelible mark on the people and the land. From the early days of American involvement, marked by escalating air campaigns like Operation Rolling Thunder, to the brutal ground battles in places like Ia Drang, the war exacted a heavy toll. The Tet Offensive in 1968, a surprise attack by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces, shook the American public's confidence in the war effort despite heavy communist losses. The My Lai massacre in 1968, where US soldiers killed hundreds of unarmed Vietnamese civilians, further eroded support for the war and sparked international outrage. As the war raged on, the US found itself increasingly bogged down in a guerrilla war against a determined enemy. The conflict spilled over into neighboring Laos and Cambodia as the US attempted to disrupt communist supply lines, expanding the war's reach and devastation. Section 5. A murky victory, declaring a winner in Vietnam. The Vietnam War was a war without clear winners or losers. Militarily, the US and South Vietnam failed to achieve their objectives. The Paris Peace Accords, signed in 1973, marked the official end of US involvement. In 1975, Saigon fell to the North Vietnamese army, ending the war and reunifying Vietnam. The fall of Saigon, with its iconic images of evacuations, symbolized defeat and the limits of American power. While the Communists unified Vietnam, it came at a tremendous cost. Millions of Vietnamese, both soldiers and civilians, perished in the conflict. The war left Vietnam devastated, its landscape scarred and its people deeply divided. Section 6. Scars of War, the Immediate and Lasting Aftermath. The end of the Vietnam War in 1975 did not bring an end to suffering. Vietnam, now unified under communist rule, faced the daunting task of rebuilding a nation shattered by war. The physical scars of conflict, from bomb craters to Agent Orange contamination, continued to plague the land and its people. In the US, the war left deep wounds. Returning veterans often faced a hostile public and struggled to reintegrate into civilian life. The Vietnam War, even in its aftermath, continued to cast a long shadow over both the victors and the vanquished. Section 7. Southeast Asia's Transformation, a region forever changed. The Vietnam War's impact extended far beyond the borders of Vietnam. The conflict destabilized Southeast Asia, contributing to the rise of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia and the outbreak of genocide in that country. Laos, heavily bombed by the US during the war, struggled to recover from the devastation. The war also heightened Cold War tensions, turning Southeast Asia into a battleground for proxy wars between the superpowers. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, formed in 1967, sought to promote regional cooperation and stability in the aftermath of the war. The Vietnam War served as a cautionary tale for the region, highlighting the dangers of Cold War rivalries and the human cost of conflict. It also underscored the importance of regional cooperation and diplomacy in addressing shared challenges. Section 8. Echoes of Vietnam, Lessons Unlearned. The Vietnam War was more than just a historical event. It was a searing lesson in the limits of military power, the importance of understanding the complexities of foreign conflicts, and the need for clear objectives and exit strategies. The war's legacy continues to shape American foreign policy, influencing debates about military intervention, the use of force, and the role of the US as a global power. The echoes of Vietnam can be heard in subsequent conflicts, from Iraq to Afghanistan, where the US has grappled with the challenges of fighting unconventional wars against determined adversaries. The Vietnam War serves as a reminder that military victory does not always equate to political success, and that the true cost of war extends far beyond the battlefield. It is a reminder that we must learn from history's mistakes to avoid repeating them in the future. Section 9. A Call to Remembrance. Keep the story alive. The Vietnam War deserves to be told and retold, to honor the sacrifices of those who fought and died, and to learn from the lessons of the past. It speaks to our capacity for both great courage and terrible destruction. It challenges us to think critically about power, consequences, and peace. Carry the memory as a reminder of peace, understanding, and compassion. Share this story. Keep the memory alive.